Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are diving deep into the anatomy of rage. We're going to explore why we get so irritated, what's actually going on inside our brains and our bodies when we explode, and, most importantly, how we can start to reclaim control. All right, let's get into it.
You know that feeling, don't you? That moment when a switch just flips and suddenly, boom, logic is gone, reason is out the window, and this raw, powerful emotion just takes the wheel. It's an intense, almost universal experience. But what is actually happening when we feel like our own minds have been hijacked?
Well, neuroscientists have a name for it, the amygdala hijack. This is the exact moment when your amygdala, your brain's emotional alarm system, goes into overdrive and completely sidelines the prefrontal cortex, the rational thinking part of your brain. In that instant, you're not really thinking anymore, you're just reacting.
So, if we want to stop this hijack from happening, we first need to understand the hardware. We're going to go deep inside the brain to look at the actual biological blueprint for anger. So, believe it or not, at the very core of it all is this tiny cluster of just about 3,000 neurons. It's called the ventromedial hypothalamus, or VMH. And get this, despite its microscopic size, this little spot is powerful enough to generate the entire catalog of aggressive behaviors. From hissing and biting all the way to full-blown rage, it all starts right here.
Okay, so the obvious question is, what flips the switch on this so-called rage center? For decades, we've pretty much blamed one single culprit, testosterone. But as it turns out, the real biological story is, well, it's a lot more surprising than that.
Okay, let's walk through this because this is pretty wild. As you'd expect, step 1, testosterone gets released. But here's the plot twist. In step 2, an enzyme called aromatase gets to work and starts converting it. And what does it become? Step 3, estrogen, inside the brain. And then in step 4, it's that estrogen that binds to the receptors in the VMH, and that's what triggers the aggression. So the big takeaway here, it's not testosterone directly lighting the fuse, but it's conversion to estrogen.
But of course, these hormones aren't acting in a bubble. A whole bunch of other factors can create what's called a low threshold state, which just makes us way more reactive. Things like high cortisol from stress, low levels of serotonin, and even environmental stuff like shorter winter days, they all add up, creating what neurobiologists call a hydraulic pressure toward aggression. It's like they're priming the whole system, making an explosion that much more likely.
So, we've seen what's happening up in the brain. Now let's explore how that all translates to the rest of the body. Because it turns out, anger isn't just in your head, not by a long shot. It is a full-body experience.
There's this radical perspective coming from somatic science, and it's summed up perfectly by Professor Kim Ju-hwan. Emotion is the movement of the body. The idea is that before you even consciously feel angry, your body is already in motion.
This is what's known as a fixed action pattern, or FAP. You could think of it like a pre-programmed physical response that's hardwired into you. When your brain perceives any kind of threat, it triggers this automatic sequence in the body. A deer freezing in headlights? That's a classic FAP. Your jaw clenching up the second you feel insulted? Yep, that's an FAP too. Your body is literally acting before your conscious mind has even had a chance to catch up. So let's just map out how a feeling gets made. First, an upsetting email pops up. That's your stimulus. Instantly, your body reacts. Your jaw tightens, your shoulders tense up, and your heart rate changes. Then, your brain, which is basically a prediction machine, detects all these internal signals and asks, okay, what does this physical state mean? It then searches its database and slaps on a label. And that is the exact moment you consciously think to yourself, I am angry. The feeling itself is the brain's interpretation of what your body is already doing. Okay, so we've covered the biology and the physiology. Now let's talk about the mental software that's pouring fuel on this fire. Ancient Stoic philosophers used to argue that the root cause of our anger is often just unrealistic expectations. It's this deep-seated belief that we're somehow entitled to a life without friction, and that is the mental trap.
The spiritual teacher Sadhguru offers this really profound framework that builds on that idea. He suggests that our entire inner world is determined by a choice we make between two states. On one side, you have willingness, being 100% yes to life just as it is. He calls this heaven. And on the other side, you have unwillingness, where you're constantly fighting reality, judging everything as good or bad, right or wrong. He calls that hell. And that's the breeding ground for anger.
So here's the really crucial insight. Anger is born from that state of unwillingness. It comes from being absolutely 100% convinced that we are right and that reality, whether it's another person's behavior or just a situation, is wrong. This violent resistance to what is can become a really deep habit, like a mental rut that causes us to react to what's happening now using these old, outdated emotional maps. Whew, okay, so with all this insight, from the brain to the body to the mind, how do we actually start to manage this incredibly powerful emotion? Let's move on to the practical stuff, your toolkit for calm, which has to address anger on all three of these levels.
All right, here's your multi-pronged strategy. First, for your brain's biology, research suggests omega-3s can help reduce impulsivity, while things like saunas or even hot baths and regular sunlight can help regulate stress hormones like cortisol. Second, for your body. Practices like Tai Chi are amazing for helping you notice and release physical tension before it boils over, and even just focusing on your breath sends a powerful safety signal straight to your brain. And finally, for your mind, it's all about shifting to that mindset of willingness. Practicing letting go of the need to judge everything and everyone as either good or bad.
And this really brings us to the core takeaway of this entire explainer. All of these tools, all of this knowledge, it all points to one fundamental and incredibly empowering truth about our own personal agency.
And this quote from Sadhguru just captures it perfectly. What happens around you is not 100% yours, but what happens within me must be my making. Think about it. We can't control traffic. We can't control other people's opinions. We can't control frustrating emails. But we can and we must take ownership of our internal experience. We have the incredible privilege of deciding what happens inside of us.
So, I'll leave you with this question. Now that you understand the machine, you've seen the blueprints, what kind of inner world are you going to choose to build?